I know y'all talked last week about the about Aaron's rod. Um, Bonus question here: what happens to Aaron's rod?
What happens to it?
I heard somebody say it. And then the Ark of the Covenant, yeah. After a while, they put it in the Ark of the Covenant. What else is in the Ark of the Covenant? Anybody know?
Tablets.
I'm sorry.
Tablets.
Tablets, manna, yeah. It's interesting. So as we start to move from where we are, we see hindsight's 2020, right? So we know what's going on here, and it's interesting that each time Moses and Aaron go before Pharaoh and he tells them, well, we need to be able to go worship 3 days out in the wilderness, and Pharaoh keeps saying no, and then finally he says yes, and then he says no. After he's kind of all over the place. But one of the plagues that we had last week was what? Does anybody remember? The blood. Yeah, the blood. How about you walk down to your lifeline? The Nile was the lifeline of the Egyptian. They were very agriculture oriented, which is this, and tonight and being able to move forward, we're going to see some of these plagues that come out. How I want to ask you, how would it affect commerce? How would it affect the pocketbook? So how does the water being turned to blood, how does that affect the pocketbook? Financially, is it a financial issue, or is it just a phenomenon? Hey, does anybody remember?
Huge flow.
Yeah.
To providing daily needs, whether it be water, food, etc.
This is where they got their water. In a lot of cases, fish, people who fish, but also this water supplied the crops. It with water. So there's a big thing. So this week, tonight, as we move forward and we look at this next plague, to me, I don't know what the grossest plague is. I was trying to think about that. The water being turned to blood is kind of gross, because the stench that would come from that and everything and what was going on. But tonight, this first one, to me, I don't know. Is everybody okay here with frogs? Anybody ever picked up frogs before? Just grab them and pick them up and
The cold and slimy.
they're cold and slimy. Tell you a little story about a frog. I don't go under my house that much anymore. I used to when I was wheel size. I could get under my house and scare me up to the corner, but my house is about 2 feet, 3 feet in some areas, way up towards the front of my house. About 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I had to do something up under there, and I couldn't talk anybody else into going up under there for me to do that. And I'm terrified of snakes. Not if I can see them. If I can see them, I'm okay with them. I won't kill them. If I know, especially they're a chicken snake or a good snake, I'll even leave them alone. But I don't like snakes when I can't see them and when I can't get away from them. Is anybody else that way, or am I the only one there? I know there's a lot that's like that. But so I crawl up underneath the house, and in my mind the whole time I'm thinking, there's a snake under here that's going to get me, and I've got to watch out for these snakes. So I had my little flashlight with me, and I would crawl for a little bit, and I'd stop and I'd shine the light for a little bit. And I'd crawl for a little bit and I'd stop and I'd shine the light. And I got up almost to the corner, maybe this much room, and I'm on my belly crawling at this point, and there's just enough room for me to get up there and flip over on my back and do what I need to do to the floor. And I get up that far, and I flash my flashlight, my beam goes across, and all of a sudden there's two eyes looking at me. And when you're thinking snake and you see two reptile looking eyes looking at you, you got a problem. And I didn't know what kind of snake it was. I just knew that it was a snake. So what am I going to do? I started trying to back. I couldn't crawl back fast enough. So finally I just tossed a rock up there that I picked out and was holding the flashlight, and all of a sudden it was a frog and it jumped. So thankfully it was a frog, but I don't really like frogs either. I just kind of gross, but it makes you wonder why God could have chosen anything to be able to be a plague, right? I mean, he's God, but he chose frogs. I'm thankful, I guess, that it wasn't snakes. I mean, it would have really been an Indiana Jones type movie if it was snakes, wouldn't it? But it was frogs. So we're going to look at this. And verse 1 says, I'll mention this. I titled this lesson, Someone Call an Exterminator, because it's bad. It's bad. There's going to be 3 different plagues that happens in chapter 8. And number 1 is the frog. And the Lord spoke to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs. There it is. I will smite you with frogs. Now, Pharaoh probably could have laughed a little bit but I don't think he understood the extent of what a plague of frogs was going to be. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up, and look at where they go. I guess this is what grosses me out, is look at where all they go. They come up out of the river, and it says, and they shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, and on your bed, into the houses of your servants, on your people, into where? Into your ovens, and into your kneading bowls. Now, Connie, you go and you go to the stove, and there's stove, and you open your cabinets, and on your favorite plates, frogs everywhere. Yeah. So y'all have nightmares tonight about this, won't you? So this is what's going to happen. And the frogs shall come upon you and your people and on all your servants. So these frogs are going to come out of the river, which is where they normally are, but they're going to come out of the river, and they're going to be everywhere. Everywhere. And cause the frogs to come up on the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the magicians. Now, you remember who the magicians are? The magicians, these guys belong to Pharaoh. It says, then the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs on the land of Egypt. Now, I've questioned this. They were already coming. So and they did have some certain power that they were able to do things, or at least make it look like they were. And I wondered if all these frogs wasn't already coming up from what Moses and Aaron did, and they just jumped up and said, all right, come on, frogs, come on. And they did that too. And they wanted credit for it. But either way, there they are calling up frogs too, just to say, yeah, we can do that too.
But what would have been a lot more impressive is if they could have stopped.
Yeah. but they didn't.
Because that would be God.
In just a little bit, they're going to try to stop something, and that is exactly what they're going to say is, well, we can't stop this. This must be the hand of God. But anyway, here they just kind of come up and say, all right, here, come on, frogs. And so verse 8 says, then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron. Now, they were everywhere. They were in the palace. Bible says they were everywhere. In every house. Entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and my people, and I will let the people go that they may sacrifice to the Lord. So he's decided that he's going to give a little. In his mind, and we find this out in just a few minutes, in his mind, it's not days. It's basically, we're going to let you. What he wanted them to do was basically sacrifice to their God right there in Egypt. And then he says, we'll let you do this, just really get together and just outside the city. But this is not where they said they needed to go. They said they needed to go to the wilderness. Out, how many days journey? Out from it. 3 days journey from Egypt. Verse 10. Let's read 9 again. And Moses said to Pharaoh, accept the honor of saying, when I shall intercede for you, for your servants and your people, to destroy the frogs from you and your house, that they may remain in the river only. So he said, you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. And the frogs shall depart from you, from your houses, from your servants, from your people, and they shall remain in the river only. Now, one thing that's going to happen here, the frogs were not a worshipped animal or anything like that, but the frogs were kind of a blessing. Anybody ever hear frogs? You ever ride down the road, or Gene, I bet you could probably hear some frogs down at your house, couldn't you?
Just the weirdest sounds you ever heard.
Yeah.
It's not the old bullfrog like we used to. It's sound like a new kind of frog.
A new kind of frog.
It's just a noise.
2020 is bad on everybody, wouldn't it? I mean, it just gets worse and worse with all this crazy stuff. Times changing. But they looked at this as a blessing, because frogs are always they're always around somewhere that's moist, somewhere that's so if there was plenty of water in the river and the streams and everywhere else, and they could hear frogs, there was not a famine in the land. So they really liked these frogs. I don't know that they used them for pets, but they liked that they could go down through there and they could hear them, because it meant that everything was agriculturally okay. They had plenty of water.
I have the Jeremiah Study Bible, and it says that an Egyptian frog goddess, I don't know how to pronounce this, Heqet.
Hecht,
What?
the goddess Hecht.
Okay, it's a frog goddess, right?
Well, she took the form of a frog, yes.
And she was associated with childbirth.
With what? Yeah, she was the goddess of the midwives,
Okay.
which should strike a note with what we read.
With this,
Yeah.
okay, that's good information.
So,
David Jeremiah coming through with a little bit of backup here. So frogs were kind of a big thing, but I'm not sure they wanted them in their cabinets. But so as we're looking on, so he said to verse 11 says, and the frogs shall depart from you and your houses, from your servants and from your people, and they shall remain in the river only. Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs, which he had brought against Pharaoh. So the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the court, together in heaps, and the land stank. So they didn't just hop back into the river. They died there, and they gathered them up, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not heed them as the Lord said. So he decided that he was going to let them. He was going to let them go, or said that he was going to let them go. And then here it says that when he saw that everything was okay, everything was kind of getting back to normal, let's get back to business. It's kind of like people now like to make a deal with God, isn't it? I hear people do that a lot. Not so much anymore, but when I was working as manager, people knew that that I was a pastor, and they would come to me and want to talk, and most of the time it had to do with I'd made a deal with God. I'd made a deal with God, and then when things were a little bit better and things kind of went back to normal, that deal with God went away. And that's kind of the world view of religion is I need, and then when I don't need religion anymore, I need God, I'll go back to whatever it was. And that's what I believe that's what Pharaoh is doing here. But it says that he has hardened his heart. And we find out really later, that and earlier God says, I will harden his heart. So God is working in tandem with Pharaoh to be able to do this. Now we had frogs, and number 2, we have lice. Lice. How about that? So the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your rod and strike the dust of the land so that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, what is turning into lice? Dust. How much dust do you have? Egypt's full of dust. Everywhere's full of dust. I always clean at the house, and when I dust, it was in my marriage vows that I didn't have to dust. When I was a kid, it was me and my brother, so we had to do the housework, and I hated dusting worse than anything. I hated dusting. It's the most horrible thing, because why? You can't get rid of it. And then 5 minutes later, you can come back and dust on right where you've dusted before. So one day, I was the oldest, and it was me and my brother, but we had 3 stepbrothers that were about the same age as us. Y'all may know Shane Thomas and Shannon Thomas and Chris Thomas. If you know, they were my stepbrothers. And they were meaner than we were, and we were mean. And I mean, we were constantly fighting and wrestling, and it was a great time when they would come over. It really was. We had all kinds of fun. But we were big into wrestling then, and we would pick each other up and throw each other across the room and throw the couch and everything else. And back in those days, we didn't have air conditioning, so guess where you cool off the house? You raise the windows, right? And there were fans put in the windows, and it just come through there. And what else come through there? Dust. It was just everywhere. So I went through, and I cleaned good, I dusted good, and next thing you know, Joey was throwing Shannon around and on the couch, and the way the sun was coming through the window on the back side, and they would hit that couch, and guess what would come out of that couch? It was just dust everywhere, just dust. So I mean, think in your mind how much dust we have, and like James said, dust in Egypt was like, it's plentiful over there. Dust. The dust turned to lice. So the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your rod. And they didn't go to Pharaoh now. Because I probably because they, God's, no, don't even give them a chance this time. We're just, lice is going to come on. So he says, say to Aaron, stretch out your rod and strike the dust of the land that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so. For Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became lice on man and beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Now the magicians worked with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice on man and beast. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, just as that's everywhere. And now, not only do we have dust, guess what else is coming? Flies. So we've had frogs, we've had blood, we've had frogs, and we've got lice everywhere. And the lice is still there, according to the Bible, because it didn't say that the Lord took it away. So is the lice still there, James? Probably. I mean, it doesn't say that it is, doesn't say that it isn't, but it never says that it was removed, but it just goes right into verse 20 and says, the Lord said to Moses, rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh, and he comes out of the water, and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go that they may serve me. Or else, if you will not let my people go, because behold, I send swarms of flies on you and your servants and on your people into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and in that day in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, in order that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the land. It's amazing to me that all this is going on and these people are seeing this. And I'm wondering, can you not put pressure on Pharaoh to do something here? Because it's undoubtedly at this point, they know what's causing all this. Again, think back to the financial side of the blood. Think back to the financial side of the frogs, what would happen? What happens to commerce? Frogs all over the road, frogs all over everything. And then you think about, it says that lice was on man and beast. So here you've got this situation going. And now all of a sudden, flies. And here, God tells Moses to tell Pharaoh that the fly swarms are not going to come in Goshen. They're not going to go to where the Israelites are. Verse 23, I will make a difference between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. And the Lord did so. Thick swarms of flies came into the house of Pharaoh, into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted because of swarms of flies. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, go sacrifice to your God in the land. In other words, just outside over there. And abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. If we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, then they not stone us. We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he will command us. So Pharaoh says, I will let you go that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far away. Intercede for me. He said, in other words, what he's saying there is, go into the wilderness. I don't know that necessarily you need to go 3 days to make that happen, but he doesn't want them to get too far out. He feels that he's about to lose them. And they're slaves. That's their economy. Verse 30, let's look at verse 29. Then Moses said, "Indeed, I am going out from you, and I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh, from his servants, but let Pharaoh not deal deceitfully in letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord." In other words, he says this has to end, this going back and forth. And Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord, and the Lord did according to the flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Not one. Pharaoh hardened his heart. At this time, all people go. So, chapter 8 is just piling on. What other plagues do we have? What we got? What we got next? Livestock, boils, hail, locust, and then death of the firstborn. So most of this attacks Egypt where it hurts, because financially they're going to be devastated over all this. When God judges somebody, it usually has a lot to do with the finances, especially when this is how their economy was. This is where their money came from. They were. Go ahead.
But it struck at the part of their worship and religious system, because each one of these plagues was a specific attack against a specific god that they worship. And so each time God is striking down, he sends the gnats, he sends the flies, soon it's going to be the cattle. There's a particular God that's supposed to be taking care of that.
Yeah.
And shouldn't allow that to happen. And God, Yahweh, is crushing that God and saying, there.
Yeah.
Next, please.
Yeah. It's the Egypt version of what Elisha did on Mount Carmel, isn't it? With all that, yeah. That's good. Good point. Anyone else? All right. As far as announcements go, let's continue to be able